Okay, so I would like to welcome you once again this evening to our last lesson, which is on tackling climate change in practice. So we're going to begin firstly with just a quick revision here, some general knowledge that I thought is interesting that we would like to talk about. So let's head over to WooClub. Let's head over to WooClub and write in the code RSHMSQ. Let's do that quickly here so that we don't lose a lot of time. Just go to WooClub. If you haven't used it before, don't worry. Just type WooClub, like you can see there in the on the screen. And then where it's written code, you put RSHMSQ. Okay, let me write that in the chat. RSHMSQ. And we're going to basically answer a couple of questions there. Remember, these are anonymous questions, so don't worry, no one is going to know who has answered which question or what your answer was. It's just a learning tool. Okay. Okay. So, WooClub, let's go. Let's try and answer the questions. I'm going to give you, let's say, 2 minutes to answer this, 1 minute to answer this question because there are 5 of them, so 1 minute each. So the first question is, 2 characteristics of atmospheric gases determine the strength of their greenhouse effect. Match the characteristic to its proper definition. Okay, so let's just try and match those. There's 2 of them, you just choose which one you think is the definition of which one. Okay. Let's do that quickly. Okay, I can't see anybody has answered yet. Okay, I think one person has answered. Okay, are we able to?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm failing to like join on the WooClub thing. I've typed the code which you've given us here, but I can't join. It's not loading.
I think maybe that might be something to do with your internet. You just have to write WooClub on Google. You click on the first site, and where it's written code, you write that code. This question is going to appear on your phone. I can see one person has already answered it. Okay. So just try it again. Let's try and do this quickly. Let's try and do this quickly. Okay, 2 people have answered. So what 2 characteristics of atmospheric gases determine the strength of their greenhouse effect? Match the characteristic to its proper definition. Don't think too much, don't worry too much if you're not very sure, it's okay. So global warming potential and atmospheric lifetime. Which of these do you think is the definition of the other? Okay. I can see only 2 people have answered. Do we have any problem that we need to? Okay, 3 people. Okay, good. So people are answering. Which of these do you think is the correct definition of the term? Okay, let's be quick. Okay, anybody else? Again, you just go to Google, type WooClub, WOOCLAP. Type WooClub, go to the first website that pops up, and just write in the code RSHMSQ. It's very easy. Okay, great. More people are answering. So just choose, basically just choose what you think is the correct answer.
I think I've tried a failed, but the internet is just off. I've typed the code, then I've also clicked where it's saying go, but it's not doing anything.
I'm not sure there because we do have some people who have managed to type in. I'm sure it must be something to do with your network, or I don't know. Is that Evans? But it's okay. It's okay. It's not a big deal, Evans. You can just maybe see how it works, and in the next one, you're going to try again. Okay, let's hurry up. Let's hurry up, guys. We're about 16 in here, so we should have about 16 responses here. Okay. Which two characteristics of the atmospheric gases determine the strength of their greenhouse effect? Okay. I'll give you a few more seconds while I'm also trying here. I'll give you a few more seconds to work it out. So that's RSHMSQ. Okay. Okay, 7 out of 10. We're going to keep it there. Let's go to the next question and then we'll see the correct ones later on. Okay, so the second question, again, it's just the same process. It should be showing on your screen now. So the second question is, we can mitigate climate change by either reducing emissions or increasing carbon sinks. Identify which of these solutions belongs to the category of increasing carbon sinks. Okay, so it's saying we have two ways to reduce emissions. Either we increase the carbon sinks. We have two ways to mitigate climate change. Either we reduce emissions or we increase carbon sinks. So the question is, which of these solutions, these options here, there are 8, which of these solutions belong to the category of increasing carbon sinks? Remember, we talked about carbon sinks and we talked about reducing emissions. Okay, let's be quick, let's be quick. Just choose whichever answer you think of first. You don't need to spend too much time on this. I'll give you about a few seconds, maybe 30 seconds. Okay, let's go. Let's go. 4 people have answered so far. We are about 15 in here. Okay, this is good. Don't just see where there are a lot of people and then, then choose that one. Just put genuinely what you think is correct. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? Let's be quick. Let's be quick. We have 2 ways to mitigate climate change. We can reduce emissions or we can increase carbon sinks. So which of these examples of solutions belongs to the category of increasing carbon sinks? Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? I'm kind of concerned why not everyone is able to. Okay. Okay, great. We're going to move on to the next. We've got more than majority, at least we've answered. Okay, 8. All right. Perfect. We're going to move on now. The last question, the second last question. Again, this should be appearing on your screen. The agricultural sector contributes what percentage to Zambia's GDP? The agricultural sector contributes what percentage to Zambia's GDP? Just put in a number. Let's be quick, guys. I'm sure by now we know how it works, so let's be quick. The agricultural sector contributes dash percentage to Zambia's gross domestic product. Okay, 2 people, 3 people, let's go. What do you people think? This is something that I remember Jonathan talked about. So if you were attentive that day, this shouldn't be a problem. Okay, 4 people. Anybody else? If you don't know, you can just guess. There's no problem. Okay. We have 4 people who've answered to this one. I'll wait for, let's see, a few more seconds. Then we'll go to the next one.
I'm having some challenges. I don't know the problem.
Okay. Kondurani, what problem do you have? Is it the same as Evans?
As in, I can't select the options and also going to the next page.
No, you don't need to go to the next page. The question that's appearing there, you just have to write a number. There's no options.
Okay.
Just, yeah, it's the agricultural sector contributes -% to Zambia's GDP. So you just write the number there on the space provided.
Oh, we're not on the same page. I'm on the previous one, where it's saying we cannot mitigate climate change. It doesn't change. I don't know the problem.
Just respond, try to choose the options that are there, and then press submit. You have to press submit response.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll move on to the next one. This is also very easy. In the Paris Agreement, each party is required to provide information on its anthropogenic emissions of GHGs, which is greenhouse gases. Tap on either the true or false sign. So basically here you just have to tap on which one is it true or false, that in the Paris Agreement, each party is required to provide information on its anthropogenic emissions of greenhouse gases. So just tap. That's okay. So when you tap, you should press submit answer so that it records that you have submitted. Is everyone just tapping this one because everyone is here? Okay. Okay. Give you a few more seconds. Give you a few more seconds. Okay. Perfect. We'll end there. We'll have a few more questions coming up, so don't worry if you are not able to work with it properly now. Maybe you have better luck in the next question. So let's look at the correct answers. Sorry, we have one more. I forgot. We have one more. This one, there is no correct answer. This one is just a poll to see what you think. Okay, this is the last one. I forgot about it. So what do you think about this statement? We will attain the Paris Agreement goals. What do you think about this statement? Just choose which one you think is correct. Or which one you think is correct, because it just depends on what you think. Okay. So we have yes, I am optimistic we can attain them. No, I don't think it will be possible. Maybe it is possible, but there's a lot of work to be done. Or we can't and we won't. As we say, okay. Okay, this is good. Okay, so I'll give you, let's see, 10 more seconds. 10 more seconds if there's anybody else who wants to. Okay, perfect. So let's move on. What are the correct answers? Uh, hmm. So here we had 100%, meaning everybody understood this. This is correct. If you got the correct answer, it should be showing on your screen that you got the correct answer. It should be showing congratulations. Okay, so global warming potential, it is a measure of the radiative effect of each unit of gas. Meaning, in simpler words, global warming potential is the amount of heat that a particular gas is able to store. Okay, so all these gases that we talk about, greenhouse gases, they have two characteristics. Either it can store up a lot of energy, or it can stay for a longer period in the atmosphere. So a good example is carbon dioxide and methane. You find that methane has got a higher global warming potential, but it has a shorter atmospheric lifetime. So it is bad because it can store up a lot of heat as compared to carbon dioxide. But it is sort of good, we can say, because it doesn't stay that long in the atmosphere before it, disintegrates. And that is opposite for carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide stays a much longer time in the atmosphere, but its warming potential is not as big as methane. So these are two characteristics that scientists or people who study the climate use to categorize the types of greenhouse effects. This is just general knowledge that I thought was interesting for you guys to know. So which of these, identify which of these solutions belong to the category of increasing carbon sinks. So you should be seeing on your phone if you have the correct answer by now. So the correct answers are increasing carbon content in the soil. Remember, a carbon sink is the one that takes up more carbon dioxide, okay, as compared to the carbon dioxide that it produces. So basically, if you talk about increasing carbon content in the soil, you're talking about technologies that literally take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and put them underground. When you talk about bioenergy power plants, which is a new technology coming up, that they have a certain technology that allows them to capture carbon and to store it. It's the same. And then you've got enhanced weathering of rocks. So when rocks weather, not an expert in geology, but I have read that when rocks weather, they react more easily with carbon dioxide in the air. And so there are some people who are working on researches on how they can weather more rocks in order for them to react with the carbon in the air. So it is absorbing the carbon. Again, it's like a carbon sink. It is a carbon sink. And then the last one is afforestation and reforestation. This one we all know about. I don't even need to say much. Okay. The other ones they are reducing emissions. If you talk about insulating houses, you talk about buying local products, about all these others. The other one was reducing meat consumption. That is reducing the emissions. Okay, but it's not necessarily a carbon sink. And the correct answer for this one was 20%. I'm sure most of you forgot. The majority, only 14% got it correct. Okay, and lastly, this one, I'm sure everybody got it correct. It is true, but the reason I put this question in was I thought it would be interesting for you to talk about anthropogenic emissions of greenhouse gases. So anthropogenic is just a very fancy looking word that means human emissions. Okay, so you look at people who study anthropology, meaning they study human beings. And so anthropogenic emissions, it talks about emissions due to human activities. Remember, there are also emissions due to non-human activities like the volcano and like the solar variations that we talked about. So thank you very much. I didn't intend to spend a lot of time on this, but unfortunately, some of us had some problems, but don't worry about that. So let's get into what we're supposed to be talking about today, which is tackling climate change in practice. And I'm going to be really quick, just so we can get some time. Okay, let me just cancel this, then we can start. Okay. Tackling climate change in practice. So there are several things, there are several ways in which I remember we had some assignments where we talked about what can be done to fight against climate change and things like that. And you had amazing answers. There was amazing ideas that came up from the assignments and from the essays, short essays that you are writing. And so we're just going to sort of solidify that today being the last lesson. We're just going to talk about the learning objectives being what can governments do to reduce carbon emissions, what can organizations do to reduce carbon emissions, and what can individuals, which is you and me, do to reduce carbon emissions, right? So national governments are not the only political actors that can initiate climate change. So when we talk about national governments, we're talking about at the top level, right? The main government at the national level. But there are many positive examples of climate change action led by regional authorities, that is the local council and some of the regional or provincial authorities. And so what is it that governments can do? Well, the things that governments can do are a lot because of course they're in charge of so many developmental tools. Okay, number one, they're in charge of regulatory tools. So basically they can make the rules. Okay? I don't want to overcomplicate the language because I'm not also a political scientist, but the basic point is regulatory tools, the government can make the rules. And so that gives them the power to do a lot when it comes to climate change. They can control economic and market tools. They have awareness raising and information tools and tools that promote voluntary action. We're gonna see examples of this very soon, so don't worry. The governments need to increase ambition to address climate change under the Paris Agreement. Remember last week we talked about the Paris Agreement and how governments, specifically Zambia as well, has agreed to most of the targets actually that were set. And so governments need to increase the ambition to address climate change under the Paris Agreement. Okay, and so we have the national and sub-national authorities. They can develop policies, measures, incentives to promote what? Low carbon development. Because again, remember, we don't only want let's stop producing carbon, because we also need to develop. You know, we are a developing country. We need to have better infrastructure. We need machines, we need better transport. All those things produce carbon. But what we're trying to do is promote low carbon development, meaning we don't stop the development, we continue the development, but we innovate in such a way that the development that we are advancing in doesn't come with the high cost of carbon. Okay. All right. So number one, what governments can do is elimination of fossil fuel subsidies. I'm going to ask you a question very soon on where you think, remember we talked about those 4 tools that the government has, right? So some of these examples fall in those tools. So pay keen attention, because I'm going to ask you a question on which of these examples you think falls in which tool. So elimination of fossil fuel subsidies. I'm sure you might have known that usually most services that come into the country are subsidized. And so even fuel itself is subsidized. So if governments can start to eliminate the fossil fuel subsidies, it means they begin to discourage people who are working in that sector, organizations working in that sector, to continue investing in fossil fuel subsidies, because it becomes more expensive. Even the people themselves begin to use less and less because it's becoming more expensive. But even though it's becoming more expensive, at the same time, it's becoming better for the climate. And so it's about making a proper balance, making a proper balance. So elimination of fossil fuel subsidies, these are just examples. Market measures such as tax on carbon. So this is something that some other governments around the world have been implementing, where they tax carbon, they tax power plants, they tax different organizations, different industries. For example, car industries or car companies, those that make cars, they tax them on the amount of carbon that they're making. And so now it becomes the responsibility of the company itself to try and reduce on the amount of carbon it produces, so as to reduce on the tax that it has to pay to the government. Okay, so all these are things that the government can do. Incentives for low carbon solutions. Again, this is similar to the previous one. Tax breaks for renewable energy. So it means now in this case, instead of taxing those that are, okay, the previous one was taxing those that are producing the carbon, right? But this one is creating incentives for those that are bringing in low carbon solutions. And so if you have small enterprises, if you've got companies that are trying by all means to use renewable energy, you begin to give them tax breaks. You incentivize them for doing that. Okay, in short, you're encouraging them to do that. So all of these things, again, are things that can become more and more advanced when it comes to how do we actually implement them. But I just hope from this, you can sort of get an idea, an introduction to what we're talking about. And then you've got awareness raising campaigns. Now, the government has got the power of the media. We have a national broadcaster, ZNBC. We need to create awareness because many of us don't even think of these things, but yet it's becoming a more and more important topic in the world today. And we are part of this global village. And so help us know what is going on and what alternatives that we have. Let people know this is what's going on. I think sometime back when Prasad was here, they spoke about deforestation and charcoal and people who are living in rural areas. So help them know what's going on as a government and show them what are the alternatives that they can have. And so they can use the media to disseminate information. They can implement climate topics in some of the subjects that are in the school curriculum so that as the younger generation are growing up, because this is the world that they are growing into, these are the things that they can sort of start to think of more and more to always have in front of them. You can have public holidays. I know of countries that have public holidays. For example, I don't know if you've heard of Greta Thunberg. She came up with this, she's a climate change activist who came up with what they call Fridays for, I've forgotten the exact catchy phrase that she uses, but it's basically, they have a holiday in the country where on that particular day, there is they're not using any carbon emissions, there are no carbon emissions basically. So industries turn off or try to use as much renewable as they can on that particular day. So like sort of like a public holiday of some sort. So all of these things are just ways of raising awareness. Governments can support voluntary actions to measure greenhouse gases, reduce greenhouse gases, compensate greenhouse gases. I remember last time I spoke to you, I talked about how this issue of climate change is very much political. There's a lot of, people have got, certain countries have got, what would you say? They have got a reputation to hold. And so you'd find they wouldn't like other countries to find out the exact amount of greenhouse gases that they are producing, maybe because they're producing more than has been agreed upon. And so what governments can do in order to increase transparency is to engage voluntary organizations, non-governmental organizations, to come and measure the greenhouse gases and to talk about ways to reduce or compensate these greenhouse gases. Okay, and we're going to look at this point in a bit right now. But these are basically some of the things that the governments can do in order to reduce these carbon emissions. And so what we're going to do now, again, we're going to go to WooClap. This is the code, and I'm going to ask you a very interesting question. I hope you're going to have better luck this time. Okay. I prefer to use WooClap a lot because it helps me sort of gauge, the participation and sort of get what everyone is thinking. So let's go to WooClap again. This time our code is JZYSYZ. Let me write this for you. JZYSYZ. JZYSYZ. Yes. Okay. So let me share my screen for WooClap. Okay. Okay. So this is just one question. Don't worry. Yeah, it is. So JZYSYZ. Now, the question here is, we're talking about the government, right? Match the government policy to the appropriate example. So just from the basic description I've given to you about some of these government tools or some of the tools the government has that it can use to fight climate change and to reduce carbon emissions. Which one of these do you think is an appropriate example? So you've got raising awareness and information tools, regulatory tools, economic and market tools, tools that promote voluntary action. So let's go there. WooClap, this time the code has changed. The code has changed. It's JZYSYZ. JZYSYZ. I'm going to go there myself as well. JZYSYZ. Okay, so let's match these. Let's match this. I'm going to give you, let's say, 30 seconds. 30 seconds to match them. Match the government policy to the appropriate example. Okay, so awareness raising and information tools. Regulatory tools. Okay. Give you a few seconds. Let's answer them. Let's match them. Economic and market tools. Okay. And then tools that promote voluntary action. Don't think too much about them. If you're not very sure, it's okay. It's just for the sake of learning. So don't worry too much about it. So match them and then press submit. When it shows you answer submitted, then you can close and wait for us to see the correct answer. We are talking about what can the government do to reduce carbon emissions. Let's be quick, let's be quick, let's be quick. Let's be quick. Okay, we have 6 people. Match them, match them, match them. WooClap, JZYSYZ. JZYSYZ. Match the government policy to the appropriate example. Mm-hmm. 6 people, only 6 people. We're going to wait, let's see, 10, 15 seconds. Okay, match the government's policy to the appropriate example. Okay, 10 seconds. Okay, 8 people. Quickly, 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 quickly. Okay, we're going to end here. So let's take a look at your answers. So this is let's see what you guys said. So 50% of you said got the first one correct. I'm sure it's showing you on your phone. It's telling you congratulations if you got it correct. So awareness raising and information tools is eco-labeling. I'm going to talk about this in a bit, but let's talk about the others. Regulatory tools. When we talk about regulatory tools, we're talking basically about the government can make rules. We have a parliament. The government can make rules, they can make policies, they can make measures and decrees. And so an appropriate example is that government announces a ban on the sale of fossil fuel powered cars, which use combustion engines. So basically petrol and diesel. At the moment, no government has done this yet, but there are some governments that have pledged to do this by the end of 2050. So that is supposing that by the end of 2050, we are able to develop the sufficient technology to, the electrical cars technology becomes more efficient and more affordable. I'm sure you've heard of Tesla now. They have been working with electrically powered vehicles, but they're very expensive again because of electricity storage. How are you going to store the electricity? You need batteries. And then the kind of batteries that are used in vehicles, that's a whole other study. So they are still expensive at the moment, but we are confident that in the near future, they are going to become more efficient and they're going to become more affordable, which means they're going to be able to compete with the cars that we now know, the ones that use petrol and diesel combustion engines. And so a government, for example, can announce a ban on the sale of those kinds of cars. That is it using what? Regulatory tools. And then you've got economic and market tools. So you've got what you call tax rebates or exemptions for companies operating on clean energy sources. So I'm sure you know that companies usually pay taxes. Okay, somebody wanted to say something? Okay, so yeah, exemptions from certain taxes. I spoke about this. Now, this is a sort of an incentive on the economic market and on the economic side. And then you've got tools that promote voluntary action. So for example, in Costa Rica, you have this program called Programa País, it's in Spanish, I think, which is a voluntary program through which organizations may be awarded a carbon neutral certification after submitting to an emissions test. I don't know why I can't see the other part, but basically what this voluntary program does is that it is a voluntary program that can assess your company. If you have a company or if you have an industry or if you've got something going on, they can assess that and give you a certificate based on the amount of carbon that you are producing. And that can be used to collect certain incentives or grants or things like that from the government. But it's basically the government letting these volunteer organizations carry out these kinds of programs. And then you've got awareness and raising information tools. I deliberately put eco-labeling because I know that if I put media, you already know that that is a way of raising awareness. But what is eco-labeling? It is basically labels on appliances and on machines and on products that shows you how efficient they are at saving energy, okay? So let me show you, I'm sure you know this, maybe you might not have known the name. Let me just show you on Google. Let's see if you can see my screen. Okay. So if you just type in eco-labeling, for example, on a fridge or on a bulb, I'm sure you've seen these colors, right? You see it in colors like these. These are not for decoration. These are actually labels that show you the class or how efficient a particular appliance is. So you find them on bulbs, for example, or on fridges. And for example, this one that is B means it is very close to A, which is class A being the most efficient, meaning they calculate, okay, how much energy is this? If you think about efficiency, when we talk about efficiency, we're talking about the energy output over the energy input, which means this fridge, right? It is using, let's say 100 watts. This is just an assumption, 100 watts of power. But the amount of power that it is actually using to do the necessary work, like to refrigerate things, maybe it's 50 watts. The other 50 watts is just getting lost maybe through the cables or through some faults or something like that. And so you would say that the efficiency of that fridge is 50, the output energy, that meaning the energy that's actually being used, and 100, which is the total energy coming in. And so you find that we can say the efficiency of that particular fridge is 0.5 or 50% efficient, which isn't good. You want to have as close as possible to 100%, meaning the energy that's coming in is the energy that is being used, all of it. And so if it's way up closer to the green, it means that it is more efficient. And so when you put labels like this on appliances, when the government mandates companies to put labels like this on their products, it becomes more transparent and easier to see which appliance is performing better. And yes, appliances that have class A or class B will be more expensive, but at the same time, they're going to be more energy efficient, meaning in the long run, you're not going to have to spend as much on electricity, and it's also good for the environment. So this is what eco-labeling is. And it is a way to raise awareness, awareness raising and information too. So you're giving information to the public in order for them to make a informed decision. Okay, so let's move on. Do we have any questions? If you have any questions, post them in the chat. post them in the chat. Okay, so let me share once again. So we've talked about governments. Now we're going to talk about companies and organizations, right? So what can companies and organizations do to reduce carbon emissions? We have, number one, estimate GHG emissions. Again, if you want to find a solution, you need to know the problem. So you need to first estimate, okay, how much greenhouse gas emissions are we making? Excuse me. And so you've got this, I don't know if I can call it an organization, but let's call it just a protocol, right? A carbon disclosure protocol, which is under the UN, which helps companies report on their emissions and actions to reduce on them. So what these guys do at the carbon disclosure protocol, or some other people call them carbon disclosure project, is that you find big companies like Microsoft, big companies like DHL. These guys, they go to those companies and they take a record of all the processes that involve energy, that involve gas emission, greenhouse gas emissions, and they bring them in the open. Okay, they bring them in the open, and so everybody can see how much they estimate, and then they also provide, emissions. They provide actions on how you can reduce them. Okay, so you can reduce them by investing in low carbon solutions, again, switching to renewables. These are things you know. Efficient appliances, meaning appliances with a good what? Eco labeling. Support public transportation. You see, there are so many people who think that, to have a good life, you have to have your own private car and have your big car that consumes a lot of petrol. There are many people who actually think that way. But then you find that, is it really necessary for you to have that huge car? Is it really necessary for you? And so you find that it's better for the environment if you use public transport, because when you use public transport, the bus, it means you have got many people being transported than if each of those people had their own car. Imagine the amount of emissions. This is something that I saw, for example, in the city where I'm living. It was very strange to me. It's a city called Padova in Italy. And everybody uses bicycles. Old people, young people, old women, mothers, even bosses. Somebody will be going to a huge office, but they'll go with a bicycle. In fact, bicycles are even more valuable than cars. Somebody can lock their bicycle, but forget to lock their car. People steal bicycles. Bicycles is just, anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that so many people are now changing their mentality. And they say, okay, if I can have a bicycle, what are my major movements each day? I move from this point to this point. Okay, can I use a bicycle? I'm not creating any emissions by doing that. And so it's sort of changing that mindset from, should I get the best things or the most expensive things that create the most damage to the environment? Or can I survive off simple things like a bicycle for transport? But anyway, that's a bit on the individual aspect. But the point here I was trying to make is that even organizations can support employees, for example, who use public transportation, and create incentives for them. That way you're reducing the global greenhouse gases. You've got the third thing is offsetting or compensation of emissions. All right, offsetting or compensation of emissions, which basically means investing in projects that reduce emissions. Now, let me explain what this word means, offsetting or compensation. I'm sure you know what the word compensate means. So when we say offsetting emissions, it means, let's think of offsetting like waste disposal. Let me use this illustration. When you buy something, there are certain things that you can reuse, there are certain things that you can reduce on to avoid wasting, right? But there are certain things that you just have to throw in the bin. I remember there's a lot of times we used to use things like those containers for mayonnaise or peanut butter. We'd use them to store other things. That is reusing. Okay. But the rest of the waste, what do? We put it in a plastic and we give it to our council so that the council can take it and dispose of it. Okay. I hope at least that's what we do. I'm sure there was a time when we used to go and throw. You go behind the house at the train station at Kunjanji Kuria, you throw your net. But I hope we all use the council people. So anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that offsetting is like waste disposal in the sense that, okay, I can't deal with this dirt myself. I can't deal with this waste myself. So I give the council to deal with it for me, but I give them a fee. And so it is the same thing when we talk about carbon offsetting. It's that, okay, me as an organization, let's say the Ngosa Bwalya organization, we have got needs. We need fuel, we need heating in our buildings, okay? And so we cannot stop using or producing these carbon emissions. But what we will do is that we are going to invest in projects of organizations that are helping to remove carbon from the atmosphere. So as if we create 50 tons of carbon per year as a surplus, I invest the equivalent amount of money in another organization that is doing the opposite. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So in that way, I offset what was on me goes on the other person. I offset and I compensate, meaning I know I've created more, but I pay other people in order for them to also remove more. So in that way, you sort of have a balance. That is what it means to offset. And that is one of the solutions that organizations and corporations can put in place, right? You can support policies and actions. Again, you can support policies and actions, just like the Paris 2015 agreement. There are so many organizations that came behind this. Look at Apple, for example. Apple, the one that produces iPhones and MacBooks, right? They were very much in support of the Paris 2015 agreement. This is the reason why some of you, I don't know if some of you may have used some of these latest iPhones. You find that they come with less what can you call it? No. Okay, like things like headphones, like chargers. You find that maybe it just comes with a cable. Before, iPhones would come with the headphones and they would come with the charger, with the cable and the head and some other accessories. The word is accessories, I was thinking. But now they come with less. Why? Because they're trying to prevent waste. And so they say, if you are a user, an iPhone user, let's say you have a phone already, you already have an iPhone with a proper charger. They say, when you come and buy the latest iPhone 13, we won't give you another charger. You'll be using the same charger that you had because we don't want you to waste. Okay, so that is sort of the idea behind it. Some people say, no, but that is the idea that they have also, to reduce on the amount of waste, because those accessories take energy as well, and they produce carbon emissions for them to be produced. And so the less they can produce, it means the less. So the less carbon is produced. So this is an example basically of companies supporting policies and actions. And you can think of different examples, even on a local level, that can be implemented. And then setting a price on carbon. Setting a price on carbon. This one, it's called internal carbon pricing, where companies identify inefficiencies in themselves and they tax themselves. So it's called internal pricing on carbon. I hope I'm not like losing you with like all of these terms, but they're just really important for you to at least know or have an idea about. So internal carbon pricing is when companies, how can I put it? So they tax themselves. They set agendas or targets for themselves. Says, what, as a company, we're not going to produce above this amount of carbon dioxide per year. And if we do, we tax ourselves. And that money might go into other projects like compensation, like we talked about, or might go into other projects that help reverse what they are doing. Okay. Okay, so divest from fossil fuels is basically investors should direct financial flows away from carbon. This is being seen now in banks. Okay, there are even banks, big banks, financial institutions, this IMF that we talk about. Sometimes they cannot invest in a country or help a country unless they take certain climate related programs on or plans. Okay, and so investors can direct financial flows away from carbon, meaning as an organization, you can try to invest in entrepreneurs, in people that are trying to make a difference on the environment. These are things that organizations can do. Okay, and so let's answer another question in WooClap. Let's answer another question in WooClap on the same code. This time it's the same code, JZYSYZ. Let's be quick this time. I'm sure we've understood it. We've understood how it works. Okay. So the second question, the second question is, which of these is not an effective way for households to reduce emissions? Excuse me. Which of these is not an effective way for households to reduce emissions? Let's answer this question. We just have to choose one. This one is easy, so let's be quick. Hello, hello, are we together? Are we together? Okay, so which of these is not an effective way for households to reduce emissions? Which one of these is not a way? Okay, we have different answers. This is good. Which of these is not an effective way for households to reduce emissions? Okay, I'll give you maybe 10 more seconds or 15 more seconds just to. Okay, 6 people. Let's have one more person maybe answer. Okay. Is that it? Nobody else is going to answer? All right. So we're going to see what is the correct answer. So the correct answer is internal carbon pricing. Obviously, internal carbon pricing is not an effective way for households to reduce emissions. We haven't talked about households yet, but I was just sort of testing you. Obviously, internal carbon pricing is something that is done in large companies and organizations. I mean, as a family, how are you going to tax yourself? Is the father or the mother going to tax, So internal carbon pricing is that. And then you've got use in efficient lighting, which is important for households. So we're going to talk about it when it comes to individuals. So let's go back to the last part. I know we've delayed a little bit, but please just be patient with me. This is the last lesson. And so allow me to just touch on this last part again. So we've spoken about, what are we speaking about? We've spoken about the government, we've spoken about organizations. Let's now speak about individuals, okay? Let's speak about individuals. What can individuals do to reduce carbon emissions? Again, it's similar to the others. You can estimate your carbon footprint. It is interesting to know, what your carbon footprint is. And there are several tools that exist. I tried one myself. They're not exact, but they can give you fairly a good idea of what your own carbon footprint is, meaning what is the amount of carbon that you consume and what are some of the ways that you can reduce that. And so by using the Citizens Climate Pledge, which is, you can just search for Citizens Climate Pledge, and I'm sure you can find a very interesting website that allows you to calculate your carbon footprint. Number two is you can reduce your emissions. Now, some of you can say, okay, if me as an individual or me and my family, if we reduce emissions, is it really going to make a huge difference? Well, as one person, it probably won't make a huge difference. But if all of those small efforts are amalgamated into one large thing, it can become a very viable solution. Remember, even for us to get into this situation, it didn't just happen in one day, like boom, we now have climate change or we now have global warming. It started step by step. One house, one company, one industry, one sector, until we arrived at this point. It means that even the solution, each one of us can have a small role, no matter how small it is, it can have an effect. And so we can begin by reducing our own emissions for yourself and for your household. And so things for your household, this was what the question was about. Things for your household, what is it that you can do? Efficient lighting is very important. if you look at the difference in terms of energy of how much these bulbs that what are these bulbs called? These bulbs that have got resistance, they use resistance technology. In short, these bulbs that look like onions, right? They consume a lot of energy. They consume a lot of energy as compared to LEDs. LEDs are those ones that glow white, light emitting diodes. So efficient lighting is very, very important because you see this kind of a bulb, this kind of, let me see, can you see where my, okay. So this kind of a bulb, it basically changes electricity into heat and then into light. Okay, so that the thing becomes so hot that it glows. Now, all of that heat that is not light, all of that is wasted energy, because when you use a bulb, you don't want it for heating. If you wanted heating, you would have bought a heater, right? But all that heat that is being emitted by that bulb, even when you try to touch it, it's very hot. All of that heat is what? Is energy that is lost. But if you try and touch a fluorescent bulb or an LED bulb, those white ones, you find that they don't get as hot because almost all of the energy that's coming into the bulb is turned into light, into useful energy that you can use. In this other kind of a bulb, these ones that look like onions, is all the electricity that is coming in, some of it is being turned into light, which is good, useful, but most of it is being turned into heat, which you don't want. Remember, we talked about efficiency, right? And so you find that these are very inefficient, and you might think it is something small, changing the bulbs. No, those white ones are expensive, but it is something that is a very, very efficient solution for households. Okay, and then you've got efficient appliances. Again, the eco labeling. So when you buy appliances, try to look for those that have a good label. And then you've got efficient car and transport, meaning if you can walk, if you can use a bicycle, use it. You know, if you can use it, reduce on consumption. Okay, reducing on consumption. Most of the times we waste a lot of food. So if you can reuse food, if you can cook it in another way, if you can keep it, store it, that can be good. Okay, these are things that you can just do on a personal level. And then you can offset or compensate your emissions. You know, you can also do this personally. You can start working with organizations that are trying to capture carbon dioxide or that are trying to do a lot of work in climate change. And you can try and invest in them or support them, offer donations for the emissions that you yourself cannot compensate for or cannot deal with yourself. Understand? And then exercise civil action. Vote for leaders that tackle climate change. Vote for leaders that tackle climate change, not leaders who think climate change isn't true, because it is. And support climate policies. Okay. And then you've got demand and support actions by other companies. Educate yourself, so especially if you look at the United Nations Climate Change Council and all the other organizations, especially on the global level, that talk about climate. At Monga Valley, so we don't want any political problems here. Yeah, but so anyway, the point is, you guys know the leaders who you think are forward thinking and can deal with these kinds of issues, and so you can support them even at constituency level. So I was talking about demand and support action by companies. Involve yourself with companies and organizations that are interested in making the world a better place. Learn from their courses. There's a lot of literature online. There's a lot of online courses that you can use. I know that some of you are environmental scientists or environmental engineers. These are things that can be good for you, good for your CV. Not that that's the most important thing, but it helps as well to be involved in these kinds of things. And so we can all take conscious decisions that are good for the climate. Those decisions send price signals to the market. Okay, this simply means that all the decisions we make on individual level, they can culminate into one huge thing that sends price signals to the market. So let's say if you want to be eating beef each and every night, the more that you buy the beef, it sends a price, what they call a price signal to the market and to the producers. So the producers produce even more beef. They farm even more cattle. The cattle produces even more methane. The machinery and all the processes involved produce even more greenhouse gases, simply because the consumer has sent that price signal by deciding to buy. And so if you buy less of the food that is detrimental to the climate, if you buy less of the clothes that are detrimental to the climate, if you use less of the transport, if you basically change your lifestyle, it changes as well what the market is going to now start offering and what the producers are going to start producing, because the producers work with your demand. Okay. And so this is basically it. This is an example of a carbon calculator that I tried myself. I tried it and I subscribed to them, though they were sending too many emails, so I had to unsubscribe from them, but they were actually very interesting information. So you can try it out. It's called Climate Hero Carbon Calculator. It's going to ask you a couple of questions that you need to answer. And then at the end, it's going to give you what your carbon footprint, approximately what it is, and some tips on how you can reduce it. Okay, so let's go to the last question in WooClub. The last question in WooClub, which is again on the same link, with the same code, same code. Let's look at the last question. I think I may have made a mistake because I exchanged the first question. Right? Yeah, now that I think about it. The question that we answered on households was supposed to be after the individuals. And the one that we're going to answer now was supposed to be for the companies and organizations. But no problem, no problem. Let us answer it as well. Okay, so the CDP, we'll see who's going to remember this one. The CDP is a popular voluntary reporting framework that companies use to disclose environmental information to their stakeholders. It helps companies report on their emissions and actions to reduce them. They do so at the request of the company's investors, purchasers, and city stakeholders. What do the letters CDP stand for? It's a long question, but to summarize, what do the letters CDP stand for? What do the letters CDP stand for? Let's try and answer this one. It's our last question. Again, the code is JZYSYZ. Try to answer it also. JZYSYZ. Okay, let's try and answer that one. Take a few seconds to think about it if you have to. Okay. Are we having any difficulties with answering it? I can't see not even one person. What do the letters CDP stand for? I talked about CDP. CDP. What do the letters CDP stand for? Do we have a problem? Why hasn't anybody answered yet?
Yeah, I think there's an issue because the answer to the question is not being submitted.
Ah, okay, wait. I think you'd need to choose two, if I'm not mistaken. Let me try and refresh it. Okay, now it's working. So try again. You can choose two or you can choose one. So CDP, what do the letters CDP stand for? I spoke about it. Okay. Please do participate. Love to get your participation as well. We have 7 people. CDP. So as you are thinking, the reason I wrote such a long question is because I also wanted just to give you the idea to say this CDP, when I spoke about it, it's an independent body that, like the word disclosure, it discloses to the public, to the stakeholders. So if I'm a company, if I'm a car company, and the investors of the company, they go to the CDP, and maybe the city stakeholders, the decision makers, the policy makers, the purchasers, those interested citizens, they go to CDP and they say, Imowa CDP, please do a report of this company, of Ngosa's company, vehicle company. We want to know the amount of carbon emissions that it is making. So it is an independent body, a transparent body, and it discloses, it puts this information in the public, because there's a tendency for some companies or some countries to hide the kind of emissions that they are making. Okay, so that's it. Let's do the correct answer. So we had two correct answers. We had, the majority said Carbon Disclosure Protocol, which is correct, but it's also called the Carbon Disclosure Project. Again, these are things that if you just type on Google, you can get the answer. It isn't climate development. No. It's not climate disclosure. It's carbon disclosure, disclosing how much carbon. So that's the Carbon Disclosure Protocol. Okay, so this is basically where our lesson for today ends. I hope you learned something. I hope you find something that can add value to you. We have basically talked about four things, three main things: the government, the organizations and companies, and individuals. And I know you have many more ideas, and we're going to use those as well just in a bit. But the announcements that I wanted to make before we conclude here is that we're going to have a Facebook Live during the course of next week, a Facebook Live discussion. So it's basically going to be on the things that we have been learning, and it's going to be live on our Facebook page, right? So if you are interested and you'd like to participate, you can contact me. It's nothing complicated. It's just maybe 15, 20 minutes of just us. We'll talk about climate change. It's basically sensitization, but online. Okay, and so we want anyone who feels they would like to be a part of this. Depending on the number of people that are going to be interested, we are going to see, maybe we can have 2, 3, or even 4, depending on the number of people. And we'll basically talk about what we have been learning so far. You have enough time to prepare, so don't worry about that. Okay, so there's that. That's number one. So let me know as soon as possible if you're interested. Send me a message directly, or if you're comfortable, you can post it in the group. The second announcement is on the community outreach program. So we're going to have a form which is going to be sent. And what we want you to do basically with this form is you're going to fill it, a part of it before and a part of it after. So the part of it before, you're going to write down a simple project, nothing complex, of how you intend to make an outreach to your community with the information that you've learned about climate change. So examples of these, it's nothing complicated. It's nothing complicated. Don't worry about the fancy names, outreach program. But ideas can include an online outreach if you would like. If you can do an online outreach, if you'd like to do an online sort of sensitization with your own audience or something, or if you want to use the CDEF audience later on, no problem. If you'd like to do a school visit, schools are opening soon. A simple school visit, maybe you speak at the assembly, or you speak to young kids about climate change. If you'd like to plant trees, anything that you'd like to do, don't limit yourself to just these ideas. This is just what's at the top of my head right now. But whatever ideas that you have. So you're going to basically write down, we'll send in a form that you're going to fill in. Okay, so you write down, this is what I would like to do. This is what I will need in order to do it. And then you send those in. And then we'll give you a period of about 1 week or 2 weeks to actually carry out what you want to do. And at the end, you're going to do a simple report saying, this is what I did. This is the number of people that attended. This is what I organized. Maybe some pictures or videos, just for the sake of documenting the event. Okay. So this is what we intend to have. And then after this community outreach program, those who do this community outreach program, that's when they get the ones who are going to graduate. And we'll talk about more that's going to happen after that. But we're going to have amazing guests from the UN actually, we're going to have a guest from the United Nations Development Program director. She's actually, anyway, let me not give out too much, but that's for the graduation. So in short, these are the two activities. The Facebook Lives will be taking place next week. So reach out to me as soon as you can if you want to be a part of those so that we can include you. And then the community outreach program, I'm going to send you the form as well. Just fill it in. Again, whatever idea you have, however you think, however small it is, we're not looking for the biggest program. We're just looking for your willingness and your commitment to participate and actually make a difference, no matter how small it may be. Okay? And so with that said and done, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for listening. I know we've taken 1 hour, 20 minutes. So thank you so much for staying around. And yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed. So if you have any questions, if you'd like to talk about something, you can do it now. The floor is open. Just open your mic and let's talk.
Mr. Ngosa, do you mind sharing your number?
My phone number?
Maybe drop in a text if you like.
I'm in the WhatsApp group, so you can just go to the WhatsApp group and you'll see my number, Ngosa, and you can send me a message on WhatsApp. I'm going to respond.
All right, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts? What would you like to say? I'd like to hear from you. We haven't heard much. I haven't heard much from you guys, So I'd like to hear from you guys. Any thoughts, any questions on the Facebook Live or on the community outreach? Okay. Anyone?
Yeah,
Yeah, Benjamin?
I think I need a bit of some clarity on the Facebook Live that you're talking about. How is it going to be conducted and what is involved in it?
Okay, so how it's going to be conducted is that we're going to have a discussion live on Facebook. It is going to be basically sharing some of the knowledge that we have learned from this series there on Facebook to that audience, right? And so you're going to have Chimunya, who's one of the facilitators. He's going to sort of prepare down some questions, maybe simple things like what is climate change, what are the effects, what can be done, things like that. And then you're going to have a group of people, maybe 3-4 people, and you'll be discussing, taking turns at answering these questions. If you go right now to our Facebook page, CDEF, Children's Development and Empowerment Foundation, you're going to find an example of how the guys who are in the other group did it, those who are taking the course on menstrual health and hygiene. They already started some of their lives. So it's going to be something similar to that, but we'll plan exactly on which questions and what. It's not going to be too complex.
Thank you very much. I appreciate.
Yeah. So just so you know, I know I've taken up a lot of your time. You can feel free to leave at this moment. But if you have anything to say, if you just like to chat, even if it's not necessarily related to climate, we can. But if you have to go, maybe data or anything, no problem. You can leave at this point. We finished our conversation. We finished our topic for today. I would just like to hear from you guys. Okay.
Oh, Mr. Ngosa, thanks for that question. I heard you had mentioned something about having having studied in Italy or something. What did you study?
Yeah, I study energy engineering. So I study energy. I'm still actually living here in Italy, and I study energy engineering at the University of Padua. So yeah, I was referring to that. Yeah, what are you doing yourself? What are you studying, or where are you living?
I did my studies. I'm actually done. Graduated in 2019.
Amazing.
Yeah, I did my studies in Russia. I was in Russia from 2014.
Okay, that's amazing. What did you study there in Russia?
in Russia, it was a double major thing. I did economics and international business. So
Economics and what?
international business.
Ah, okay, international business. That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
That's
So
great.
that's what I did, and yeah, pretty much that. But I'm thinking of
Okay.
doing my masters this year, but I don't know. I'm honestly I'm not really motivated, but I know I should. But I'm not too
Okay.
motivated to do that. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, hopefully you get the chance to and the motivation to.
Yeah, I think I guess the lack of motivation is largely because I haven't really, you know, made up my mind on like which one I should pursue on the master's
Mm.
level. Yeah.
Ah, okay. I think economics is very broad, so you have so many opportunities, so many chance choices.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. There are a lot of choices to pick from.
Okay. No, that's amazing.
So which are you?
Which
Yeah, are you in?
I'm in my first year of my master's degree. This
Oh,
is my
oh,
yes. I before I studied, I was in Algeria, so I studied
oh,
electrical engineering in Algeria, and then
mhm,
I came to study energy engineering in
mhm.
Italy. So I'm in my first year of my master's.
That's a good one. A good one.
Yeah. So Francis, Moses, Konderani, how are you guys doing? Okay, good.
Okay, how are you, sir?
Good. You
I need-
can call me Ngosa. You don't have to call me sir. I'm not that old.
Okay, all right, sir.
Yeah.
So, what's the minimum number of people, the one community network outreach?
It depends with the kind of outreach that you're going to do. So if you're going to be going to a classroom, obviously there's many people. If you're going to be just planting some trees somewhere, that's different. So it depends, really. It depends. There really isn't a minimum number. It just depends on what activity.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see who else has remained with us. Mr. Francis, I hope you're doing good. Moses, I think Moses, you've been with us from the very beginning, right? Good to see you.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, great to see you at the end as well.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's been quite an exciting journey.
Yeah,
Learned
yeah.
quite a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think climate also has a lot to do with finance, just like you mentioned that you're in finance, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember. So climate does have a lot to do with finance, and I'm sure there's things, I don't know if maybe there are things that you have come across in your own field related to this.
To climate,
I,
yeah. We had a course in what was it called? Corporate social responsibility. Actually, that was my introduction to climate change and stuff. You know,
Ah,
so yeah, I was introduced to that during that
ah,
time. So
that's great. Is it the
mm,
same for you, Moses, as
some
well?
of these reports and protocols that are there with regards to climate change.
Uh-huh.
It was during that time when I was introduced to them.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was even given like an assignment to come up with a project that a particular company in Russia could like and the Cape,
Yeah.
so that like just basically cleaning the river. So I
Okay.
was told to come up with a project for that. You know, did the project, and I think a few months after I traveled, I was done with everything. The person that was my supervisor, the head of department basically, sent me an email like, oh,